Hey guys, it's Cheryl from Woodshop Diaries, and if you were around last year, you might remember this outdoor sofa. After that, I shared the matching chair. Then of course came the matching love seat, and I completed the set with the matching coffee and side table. At that point, honestly, I thought this collection is complete, let's wrap this up and move on to the next thing. But for a full year, I've been receiving requests to make a matching sectional. When I'm thinking of a sectional, there's two versions that come to mind, but I'm not sure what other people are thinking when they ask me for it. You've got the Chaise Sectional, or I think it's Chaise if you're fancy. This is basically like a sofa with an attached ottoman. Or you have the sectional, which is basically like two couches butted together at a 90-degree angle. Either way, since I wasn't sure what people were asking for, I decided to build both. In this video, we're starting with the easiest version first, the Chaise Sectional. And in the next one, I'll be sharing how to build the other version, whatever you call it, the sectional. So be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you're ready to dive in, let's get building. The number one question that I have gotten in the year since posting the outdoor sofa is, where did you buy the cushions? These are the cushions I'll be using. I built the sofa and the sectional and the chair and all the pieces to fit these cushions. So these come as a set. You get a seat cushion and a back cushion. They come in various colors. I will link exactly what I used in the video description below. This is a very standard size outdoor cushion set. The seat is advertised as 24 inches by 24 inches. I will note that they actually measure closer to 23.5 by 23.5, which is totally fine. I built all of the seating slightly undersized, so even if you bought cushions that were actually 24 by 24, they would still fit fine. They would just be a little bit snugger. I think that's all I need to say about that. So if you're ready to get building now, let's go. Just like all of the other matching pieces in this set, I built this sectional from cedar 2x4 and 4x4 lumber. This project consists of two separate pieces, the chaise lounge and the one-arm sofa. These pieces will simply butt together once completed to make the sectional. I've included the full material and cut list for each of the individual pieces in the building plans that I've linked below. I started by building the two side frames. These side frames consist of three pieces of 4x4, one square front leg, one angled back leg, and a piece that runs between them at the top. I also cut a 2x4 seat support to run between the front and the back to support the seat slats. In the original design, I cut the angle on the seat support so that the seat would slope toward the back 4 degrees. But since the seating will be going in two different directions with the sectional, I had to install it flat so that they'll all be on the same plane. I drilled 3.5-inch pocket holes into the ends of the top 4x4 piece on the bottom side. The Craig XL pocket hole jig has a setting for 3.5-inch material both on the jig and on the bit, so make sure that they're both set the same before drilling. Also, don't worry that one end of this piece is angled, it'll still work out just fine. Then I swapped back to the standard size pocket hole jig and drill bit to drill 1.5-inch pocket holes into the ends of the 2x4 piece. Again, don't worry about the boards being angled, just make sure to drill the pocket holes square to the end. I used these 4-inch pocket hole screws to attach the top 4x4 brace between the two legs first. These screws are specifically made with a protective coating for use in treated wood and use outdoors. Then I installed the 2x4 seat support between them so that it was flush to the inside of the legs. I used the Craig Blue Coat pocket hole screws here because they're also made with a protective coating for use outdoors. For the back framing, I cut another 4x4 with one end mitered 20 degrees and the other end square. I laid this out on the inside of the frame so that the mitered edge was even with the bottom edge of the 2x4 and the front was right at the corner. Then I used wood glue and 4.5-inch timber screws to secure it in place. Once one side was built, I built another just like it, only mirrored. So one side will be the left side of the Chaise lounge and the other side will be the right side of the 3-seater couch. Some people have mentioned that they prefer the armrest to go on top of the legs and cover the end grain. And if you want to build it like that, that's perfectly fine. I would just rather have them this way, so I'm sticking with this. Now the armrest pieces are together, but I also need to assemble two sides that don't have an armrest for each piece of the sectional. For this, I glued up 2x4s. So I've cut these so that they overlap each other at the joint, so it's basically like a 4x4 with a half lap, but I made them out of 2x4s because I got my 2x4s here for $8 a piece. And a 4x4 was $45. So even if I could get two of these out of one 4x4, that was still $22.50 versus $8. So I did this to save money. If you wanted to use a 4x4 and just half lap it at the joint, definitely you can do that as well. This is essentially the same concept. I'm going to join these together. Like, so this would be a piece joined and this would be a piece joined, and then I'm gonna glue them to each other. You can definitely use dowels if you want. What I'm just gonna do is just run a bead of glue and drill a pocket hole. And then the pocket holes I'm gonna leave on the inside, so then when they're glued together, you don't see the pocket hole. You'll notice that these 2x4s have square corners. These were rough cut cedar 2x4s, so the corners weren't already rounded. 2x4s with rounded corners would work totally fine for this, but where the rounded corners butt together, they just won't glue up quite as clean. I glued and screwed these pieces together and allowed to completely dry. Once these were dry, I trimmed the ends smooth and sanded away all of the glue squeeze out. I repeated to make two, but I made sure to mirror them so that the end grain in the middle was opposite each other. We will come back to that in just a minute. I also glued up a few 2x4s in pairs to make some legs. At this point, I focused my attention to building the chaise piece. The chaise is basically like a really deep chair, so I cut two seat supports for the sides. I mentioned earlier that I glued up a few short legs, and I used pocket holes and screws to attach these supports to two of those. Then I attached one to the back leg support, making sure that the pocket hole screws weren't going into the end grain. And I attached the other support to the side with the armrest. Then I attached the two sides together with a 2x4 between the front legs and a seat slat toward the back. This back seat slat butts right up against the back 4x4 support on the left side, but that 4x4 piece isn't on the right side. So I used a speed square to just make sure that I didn't install it crooked, since I didn't really have a good reference point. I ripped a 2x4 in half to make basically 2x2s to glue along the back supports to install the back slats too. These needed to be installed 1.5 inches back from the front edge, so I just clamped a 2x4 here as a spacer block. I put these pieces here so that I could install the 2x4 back slats onto them with screws. Now, when I shared the matching sofa and chairs last year, several people asked why I didn't just install the back slats with pocket holes, and you definitely can. I actually built the original sofa that way to begin with because I thought that the pillows would hide the pocket holes. But after it was assembled, they were still very visible, and I just didn't like how it looked, so I changed my mind and installed them this way instead. Either method works fine. Once the back slats were in, the last part was simply installing the rest of the seat slats. I didn't measure the spacing for these, I just eyeballed it until they looked about even and secured with pocket holes and screws. And with that, this chaise piece was done and I moved on to the sofa part. I assembled another side without an armrest by just running a 2x4 seat slat between a short leg and the back angled support. The span of this sofa was too long to run a single 2x4 without some sort of middle support. So I cut a 12-inch long 4x4 post and attached 2 equal-length 2x4s on each side so that the overall length was 70.5 inches. That would be the width of 3 of the seat cushions. I secured this at the front of each of the side frames with pocket holes and screws. Now I could attach the back seat slat and the bottom back slat. Added those same 2x2s along the back, just like I did on the chaise, to attach the back slats to. I installed the bottom back slat first to the 2x2s with screws. Then I added the top one too. Now you may be wondering why I added these slats first, but I do have a reason. Having these pieces already in place just makes it a little bit easier to get the middle support in its proper place. As I was building this, I didn't know what dimensions to cut these pieces, so I was able to just clamp them, mark where they intersected, and then cut them to length. Once they were all cut, I could assemble the 3 pieces together. Of course, in the plans, I provide the dimensions for you so you don't have to figure it out, but it still helps to have these pieces already in place to clamp it once it's assembled. I use pocket holes and screws to attach the 2x4s together, then I use screws going a couple different directions to attach it to the 4x4 post. I clamped the support onto the slats and secured it to the center post at the front. This should be about 1.5 inches down from the top. Then I secured it to the back corner slats. From here, it's super easy. Just basically add the remaining slats and it's finished. And at this point, the build itself is complete and all that's left is finishing. Cedar can be left unfinished, but it will quickly turn gray and look pretty weathered if exposed to the sun and rain. I want these to look nice for a really long time, so I applied an outdoor stain and sealer to the sofa. To be honest, it was a little difficult to get between all of the slats, and then I remembered that I actually meant to finish these pieces separately before assembling. Whoops. But for now, I did the best I could, allowed it to dry, and then I drug it out to the middle of the yard to take some photos. The middle of the yard is not its final resting spot, so I didn't actually attach the 2 pieces together here, but I do recommend screwing them together once you get them where you want them. Also, depending on the surface that you're putting them on, you might consider adding some foot levelers. I added these to the matching chairs from last year and they worked really well to just help keep them from rocking on uneven surfaces. Anyway, for now, we were racing an incoming thunderstorm, so I'll leave you with a few quick shots of the finished project before we head in from the rain. I hope you enjoyed watching this come together, and if you'd like to build one of your own, grab the printable building plans in the video description below. And if you're excited to see the other version of the outdoor sectional, I'll be sharing it next, so be sure to subscribe and stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching, friends, and until next time, happy building!